Good afternoon. My name is Louise Guillaume. I'm a reporter in the sustainability team covering eco-design and circular economy at Politico. And you're watching Politico Live, the live extension of Politico's unbiased journalism. During today's event, we will talk about how to make products greener and what does it mean to make them the norm in the EU. The European Commission presented last week a key element of its European Green Deal, which aims indeed to promote more circular and sustainable business models and to reduce the environmental footprint of products. With its new eco-design for sustainable products regulation, it wants to make sure everything from your smartphone, laptop, t-shirt, desk, and even steel and chemicals are made in such a way that they reduce the use of hazardous substances, are easy to repair, to upgrade, and to recycle. In short, that products last longer. So how will this work in practice? Is the ambition of the European Commission shared with co-legislators, with the industry, with other stakeholders? Are there gaps to be filled in the Commission's proposals? Are some of the questions that we will try to answer during today's discussion with our distinguished panelists. But before we dive in, we have some housekeeping remarks. So our partner for today's event is the US Cotton Trust Protocol, and we will hear from them in a few minutes. Thanks to all for joining us online. We would like to make this event as interactive as possible. Therefore, I invite you to engage and participate by tweeting about it at Live Politico and ask questions via the Slido platform. You can use the hashtag #MakeGreenTheNorm. When submitting questions, please include your name and organization so it's transparent for our viewers and interviewees who is asking the question. And I will prioritize also these questions. You can already share your thoughts and answer the poll presented by the US Trust Protocol. So the question is, what is the most important element to make products more sustainable? You have a different answer, so I invite you to look at the poll and we'll go back to it at the end of the event. So before I welcome our first guest, we'll hear some opening remarks from our partner, the US Cotton Trust Protocol, Gary Adams, its president. So Gary, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Louise. Hello, everyone. We thank you for joining us today to discuss such an important and relevant topic. As Louise said, I'm Gary Adams, president of the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol, an organization that was launched to set a new standard in more sustainably grown cotton in the United States. We appreciate legislative actions like the Sustainable Products Initiative and welcome the European Commission's actions to ensure that products are as sustainable as possible, supported by real data. Sustainability is at the core of the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol's mission. We launched the program in 2020 with a goal to set a new standard in sustainable cotton production, where transparency is a reality and continuous improvement to reduce our environmental footprint is the central goal. According to research conducted by the Trust Protocol and the Economist Intelligence Unit, 51% of decision makers at brands and retailers believe that consumers are driving the increased focus on sustainability issues in the fashion and textile industry. The interviewees in the study also said that they viewed each successive generation as more willing than its predecessors to demand sustainable goods. With the Sustainable Products Initiative, the Commission has heeded the call from consumers to ensure that products placed on the market are as sustainable as possible. One of the ways to ensure this is by focusing on how data can be used to increase circularity. In its proposal, the Commission stresses that product traceability and reliable data are essential to creating more circular systems. We understand the importance of data and how it can increase visibility throughout supply chains. That is why the Trust Protocol offers unrivaled transparency for cotton through the supply chain. The Trust Protocol was created because we understand that brands and retailers need access to environmental and social standards and a system they can trust when sourcing their materials. To deliver against this, the system was developed with industry experts and designed specifically to go beyond existing programs. However, it was essential for us when we developed the trust protocol that it would simplify information sharing within the supply chain and provide transparency and confidence for brands and retailers. To help simplify data in the supply chain, we use our protocol consumption management solution to create a transparency map that provides the authenticated origin of U.S. cotton, along with the names and locations of the trust protocol mills and manufacturers that were involved in all parts of the production process and into the finished goods that are shipped to the brand and retailer. This means that the trust protocol is the world's first sustainable cotton fiber to offer article-level supply chain transparency. We welcome the Commission's commitment to circularity and sustainability, and we're excited to see how industry can help reach the goals of the circular economy. We also thank POLITICO for hosting this event and the speakers for giving their time to discuss such an important topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary, for your talk. Now we'll move to our first guest for today. I have the pleasure to introduce European Commissioner Virginijus Sinkevicius, who is the Commissioner for Environment, Ocean and Fisheries. So I'll already start with my first question, Commissioner. So the package that you presented last week is quite an ambitious proposal, and it really widens the EU eco-design policy to target non-energy related products, which is indeed one of the main features of the new policy. So what's the challenge for you to regulate these new product groups like textile and furniture?
First of all, of course, good afternoon to everyone. I think, of course, in the end of the day, the biggest challenge is going to be to have the product groups regulate different product groups, because you cannot have sort of one horizontal approach to all. So each product group will have its assessment, consultation, and then, of course, according to that product group specificities, we're going to have a secondary legislation proposed. So I think the biggest challenge is going to be scope and let's say handling that scope of a challenge.
Mm-hmm. And in the proposal, you also propose to change a little bit how the Commission is regulating those product groups using more delegated act, transitioning from a directive to a regulation. Can you explain a little bit the thinking behind this? Is it because just things weren't going fast enough when it comes to eco-design?
I think overall, if you look at eco-design, it of course I think overreaching its goals and as regards energy-related products really saved billions in pockets of Europeans. But most importantly, that of course we want to go ahead even faster, and we wanted to play a
I think we've lost the connection with the Commissioner. Okay, so it will be just a few seconds, hopefully, so that we can get back online with the European Commissioner Sinkevicius, who is actually joining us from Strasbourg. It's plenary week, so we'll be just a few seconds. Just bear with me. So, maybe just picking up on indeed what the European Commissioner just said, one of the indeed new challenge of the Sustainable Product Initiative is to go beyond regulating energy-related products, and that's the main challenge that the Commission has set to itself, to try and regulate new product groups like textile, like furniture, and obviously that means looking into different and new requirements for these products. And the proposal very much insists on having new requirements on the durability of products, on their recyclability, on their repairability, and also provide more and clear information about how easy products are to repair, what's their environmental footprint, so that consumers, when they're going to a shop, whether it's in their town or online, have the necessary information to make their choice and eventually choose a product that is greener, that is maybe more sustainable, that is easier to repair over the long term, to be upgraded, so that whether it's software upgrade or any other element of the product, and so that's indeed what the European Commission wants to go. But obviously we'll see in the coming months as this proposal will be discussed with the co-legislator, the European Parliament and the Council of the EU. Here I see, perfect, that the European Commissioner is back online with us. Sorry for this technical interruption. So I was asking you also, how soon will the consumers see a change, Commissioner, with this new
Of course,
proposal?
I hope as soon as possible, because I'm very thankful, and I hear you trying to explain, and I think you know our proposal very well. But for consumers, of course, to really understand the difference, they need to see it in the reality. And so I think, of course, it will take some time as regards the co-legislators' decision. But European Parliament and the Council, the current Council presidency named it as matters of priority. So I'm hopeful that the processes will move on soon, and by the middle of 2023, we're going to have a final decision.
Mm-hmm. So 2023, and for does that also include like new product groups like textile,
Yes, so
or do we have to wait a little longer for those ones?
No, so we will do it in parallel working with co-legislators on final outcome, but we will also start assessing certain groups, assessing who could be the first groups already in summer this year.
Mm-hmm. And so the aim of this new policy is also to incentivize consumer into more sustainable behavior and choices. So in that sense, do you think that, for example, secondhand or refurbished products, or products that show that they are really more sustainable than others, should be, for example, taxed differently to incentivize these products over maybe less sustainable ones?
We don't go yet into taxation. I think we should start first with clear, targeted information, which would be, of course, easily accessible to consumers. Better quality information. I think that's sort of the first steps. We're building on the examples of eco-design, which worked out perfectly. Consumers, in the end of the day, they made the choices. Just seeing a very simple sticker with A to G groupings of the products, and they made their decisions. They want to, let's say, have a product which could save them energy, or they would maybe pay cheaper for not so efficient device. So same going to apply, and I'm pretty sure consumer will do those choices depending on, let's say, for example, how long the goods are going to save. Is it a better quality? What environmental footprint it has done? I think this is a first crucial steps to be fully implemented.
Okay. And obviously, the package is quite ambitious, as we outlined. It contains a new requirement, horizontal requirement on durability, repairability. In the future, we'll see how they will be rolled out in secondary legislation. There was also the proposal of having a digital product passport, of banning the destruction of some unsold goods. Are you confident that the co-legislator will retain the ambition that the Commission has presented last week?
So we don't know yet the council final position, because as always, I guess, there will be different positions from different member states, but I'm pretty sure they will find a middle ground. But as regards the parliament, we already hear a big support, because straight after when I presented publicly the initiative, I of course met with members of the European Parliament in the Envy Committee, and really they were happy, I think, with the proposal. On some parts, of course, they see that there could be improvement. You, for example, mentioned a ban of unsold goods. Many members of the Parliament asked why it couldn't be introduced straight away. But overall, I think everyone is accepting circular economy initiatives very well, and I feel the same with talking with the business community, consumers. They're also on board, so that makes, of course, politicians, let's say, to feel that mandate that public and society is giving them, and of course to accept this initiatives rather well.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, when we talk about the future implementation of this new regulation, you at the Commission you have assessed that it will require at least an additional 40 people working full-time on the legislation. So, and that you will need to set priorities. So at least 40 people by 2027 from the current staffing that you have. So considering the budget constraints that you have at the Commission, where are you going to cut to ensure that indeed the eco-design policy is fully implemented?
So I think, we well understand, and in the Commission there is a vast understanding of the scope of the challenge, and of course we shouldn't be thinking about some additional funds to be allocated. So most likely we have to look within the Commission, and of course prioritize what is the key priority. I think this package is a key priority. As I said, it's very well accepted by the Europeans, by business, and by the co-legislators. So of course we have to make it a top priority to ensure that this package is moving forward, and especially the secondary legislation, which, when it's fully implemented, will allow Europeans to reap off the benefits.
Mm-hmm. And so we already almost reaching the end of our time together, Commissioner. So I would have just maybe one last question, because obviously the war in Ukraine is on everyone's mind at the moment. And so wanted to understand how this is also impacting the work of the Commission. You decided to put forward this package on circular economy last week, whereas the week before you decided to postpone the package on nature restoration and sustainable use of pesticide. Why was that? How is the war also impacting how you roll out these different bits and pieces of the Green Deal ambition?
So clearly that, the war, the Russia's war in Ukraine is impacting on the EU on every level: political, social, and economic. And I think, what's very clear with this package, that we face strategic dependencies for many materials and fossil fuels. About 20% of raw materials we use are import. So that's also a high dependency. I know that in the whole debate, we of course first of all speak about fossil fuels, about gas, oil, and coal, but I think we also should look at other dependencies. And even so, that nature restoration legislation is now postponed. I think in that debate, which is now quite a lively debate, as regards the farming and as regards the biodiversity, I think there is one more dependency which we should tackle, and what Farm to Fork exactly offers to do is dependency on Russian fertilizer, which is occupying quite a huge market here in the European Union. And I think we have to ensure that our farmers are not dependent on the Russian fertilizer. So just the timing, but I'm pretty sure that that our proposal is going to go soon.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much for your time, Commissioner, and for answering our question on the Sustainable Products Initiative. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And looking forward to hearing more about what the Commission prepares next on circular economy. It's now time for me to welcome our 4 guests for today's panel discussion. So we'll have Paolo Falcioni, Director General of Aplia Europe, the industry association representing home appliances manufacturers. Justin Wilkes, Executive Director of the Environmental Coalition of Standards, ECOS. We also have Matthias Margai, Head of Unit responsible for sustainable products at the European Commission's Directorate General for the Environment. And also joining us from Strasbourg, MEP Delara Burkhardt, German MEP with the Socialists and Democrats and a member of the Environment Committee. So Delara is not yet with us, but she'll be joining in very soon, as there are ongoing votes in the European Parliament. And as we know, plenary week is always very busy for our members of parliament. So I will remind our audience to ask questions. I see there are already some coming up, so please keep on posting them, and I'll try to ask as many as I can during our time with our speakers. So I'll maybe start with you, Matthias. Could you maybe please explain to us how this new regulation on eco-design for sustainable products will also interact with the other proposals that the Commission presented last week, and with the proposal that will come a little later on this year in July with the second part of the circular economy package? I'm thinking, for example, about the Right to Repair initiative or the initiative on green claims.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks a lot for inviting me here. The basic principle of how the sustainable products regulation interacts with other initiatives is one of complementarity. So we looked very carefully, on one hand, on how existing legislation would be affected. And there, if I simplify it, we sort of apply a principle of gravity. So if we have an existing piece of law that already deals quite in detail to the satisfactory level with the sustainability of certain products, then it's very unlikely we would prioritize to do this under the regulation. Similarly, especially with the proposals on a consumer protection or information, we would on one hand provide the technical requirements that are needed. So to give a specific example, on a proposal for consumer protection, there is generally a need to introduce, to present the repairability potential of the products. But of course, it would be more for the current eco-design and the new eco-design regulation to set out more detailed rules on how this should be presented when this is necessary. So again, it's a question of complementarity. We had carefully looked at what's on, and we will be carefully looking at what comes later. And as you know, every delegated act that we foresee has its own impact assessment, and this is something we'll be looking at very carefully. Also, as it comes from the question you put to the commissioner, we really need to focus to get things done. So the intention here is not to spend too much time on looking how to do things in detail where they're already done, but to basically make sure that the businesses can comply with this and that the consumers get the benefits as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. And in preparing this reform and revision of the eco-design policy, what was the most challenging issue for you in the Commission in indeed going towards regulating new types of product, new product groups that you haven't really touched upon before?
I would say some of the challenges, of course, still ahead of us, as the commissioner said, because we had now adopted, if you want, a framework regulation. We are already have a vast amount of work that is needed to prepare some of the implementing measures in the future done. So I would say, but this challenge remains on developing rules in areas where we don't have them anymore. I would say part of the challenge was also to reassure, and I'm sure some of my fellow panelists will speak on this later on, was to reassure different sectors that what we have in mind is actually going to be tailor-made. I heard a lot of, when I was asked to coordinate this effort, which is almost exactly a year ago, one of the repeated messages I heard was you cannot regulate telephones in an exactly same way as you would textiles. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of our challenges was also to convey the message that we completely understand that. And the proof is in the pudding. So when we roll out the measures, this will be something that we'll be doing. Mm-hmm. And maybe just a second point, which I think is important to really emphasize. We had brought the knowledge and the objectives of different departments together, which maybe was a challenge at times. So I've been coordinating an effort with 3 co-lead departments, with the environment, grow, and energy. But I think it's also a great advantage. So it's not just a challenge, but it's also a great advantage because we have now the strength, the knowledge aligned. And I just wanted to mention this because I think it goes well with your question.
Mm-hmm. No, indeed. And I'd like to ask you, Paolo, indeed, on this issue. Your organization, Aplia, when the package was presented last week, warned a little bit that expanding eco-design to a wide range of new products could risk hampering some of the efficiency of the policy. So could you maybe elaborate a little bit on this idea and maybe in response also to what Matthias just said?
Yes, but first of all, the SPI reminds me of the novel The Lord of the Rings, where the initiative would play the role of the ring to rule them all. Because in a sense, it is a catch-all proposal, where in the same legislation, there is the eco-design, there is the energy labeling, there is a market surveillance, there is chemical legislation, there is waste legislation. So the challenge that I see for the Commission, but actually for all of us, it is to make sure that there is homogeneity and coherence between the new package, the new framework that is being put forward, and the existing legislation. So that to us, it's extremely important because we all are for designing and placing on the market more sustainable products, but we need that there is coherence in all the legislative corpus that is put forward by the Commission. Then, in a sense, I am probably the least qualified to speak about the enlargement to eco-design and energy labeling, because we have been subject to those legislation for 25 years. And we are a significant part of the savings that the Executive Vice President named in 120 billion euro per year, which is huge. So, I mean, the fact that now the legislation is targeting other products, we heard it will be on a product-by-product basis. And that, I think, it is a very important way forward.
Mm-hmm. Justin, I'd like to have your input as well. Could you maybe give us your first assessment, let's say, of the Commission's initiative? What are the strong points that you see, but also maybe the weaker points or the things that you see, or where there are maybe gaps that need to be filled by the co-legislators?
Sorry, it's me or it's
Justin. We'll go back to you, Paolo, in a second. Yes, Justin, please.
So I think from ECOS's perspective, as the Environmental Coalition on Standards, we warmly welcome this Commission proposal. It potentially does provide that leap towards sustainable consumption and resource use that we so desperately need. It will help develop dramatically the circular economy. So I think in terms of framework legislation, I think the Commission can be congratulated. And I think Matthias and the Commissioner's team can have a well-deserved rest and celebrate a very, very good proposal. Unfortunately, they're not resourced sufficiently, as we found out, for them to have a rest. And there's a lot of work still to do. There are a couple of weaknesses that we see in the proposal. But I think overall, if we look at the potential that this eco-design proposal has to be able to deal with durability, repairability, reusability, I think it's a very strong framework. The proof will come in the pudding, as we say. And I think also to respond to Paolo's view and his connection to the Ring of Power and the Lord of the Rings, the first Hobbit edition, the ring wasn't quite as powerful as the second edition when he decided he was going to do a sequel. So I think we can see that parallel clearly in this Commission proposal, and that we are seeing a sequel to the eco-design framework and an extremely successful framework. So obviously we congratulate the Commission with its ambition, but it has, if you like, applied an extremely successful framework, an under-resourced framework. And a deliberately under-resourced framework. It's not that the resources are not there, they've been chosen not to be applied to the eco-design framework. And that does need to change. It needs to change for the existing work programme as well as the future iteration of the proposal.
Matthias, that's indeed a lot of praising for you in your work, but also a big warning about the lack of resources and the challenge that there will be to put everything in motion. I'd like your reaction on this.
Yes, thanks. And I'm always happy to give it in public instead of reading what people may have said off the record. But first, since I really appreciate Paolo's metaphor, and as an avid fan of Tolkien, I would like to just say that my emphasis would not so much be on a one ring that rules them all, because I not at all see the works of Sauron on what we're trying to do, but more on the fellowship of the ring. And this is really the message I have, both on what we've done in the Commission, because it was a fellowship of all the races in that case that was bringing forward the challenge of how to get away from the destructive power of the ring. And what I think we have here is really the work of different policymakers from different areas in the Commission and in the member states, working together on a transformative agenda. And then on the same side, also on the stakeholders side, we'll be working with people, because There will be product by product regulation, because as you know, one of the, and I'm coming now to your direct question, we've been looking hard on how to make the rules faster or more widely applicable to get over the problem of a bottleneck of resources. And one of the ways in which we hope to do that is to have horizontal measures. So where it does make sense to apply horizontal measures across different categories of products, we will do that. For example, a lot of rules on durability could be envisaged, imagined that cut across different products, not necessarily same ones, of course, for textiles as they do for electronic equipment, but they would within each broad category. Second point, you asked this question, the commissioner, he answered. This question was asked in the press conference, vice president of the commission answered. What I can say is that we had a very positive experience of bringing the resources of the three directorates general together, and also had involvement of many others. We had done, and this is the technocratic part of my answer, we had done a thorough job on assuming what we need to do X, and we have explained this in our legislative proposal so that co-legislators have a full view, and I think we'll see how successful we can be. But we are determined, we are working together, and we have very clearly outlined what we need to go with what level of ambition. And my final point is, it is not just the Commission. It is also on how much resources will be invested in this by the member states, also by the companies, how constructive will our consultation process be. So if everybody follow on a roughly really positive first reception of what we're trying to do, I'm pretty optimistic we could get there. But it is a very complex, big challenge, and we are fully aware of it. It would be irresponsible to pretend it's not a big job that's ahead of us.
Indeed. So I see Dara was able to join us. Sorry you couldn't be there for just the start of the discussion, but we were talking about the first assessment that we have of the Sustainable Products Initiative, and so I'd like to have actually your input as well. What did you think was going in the right direction, but also what gaps would you like to fill from the Parliament side on this very important proposal for the Green Deal?
Yes, Louise, thank you so much, and excuse me for jumping in a little bit delayed, but we are now back in presence mode in the Parliament, so it's always a little bit tricky to plan. I was very happy yesterday last week when the SPI was presented, because I think we really saw a very comprehensive package that really goes in the right direction, including all the main products that need to be targeted by such a regulation, which leave a big footprint of carbon emissions. And especially when I think about electronic products and textiles, we have the place 2 and 3 on the world's global emission scaler, the industries with the highest emissions. So I think it's really, really good that we step up our responsibility for reducing the footprint in that sense. But of course, there are some things that have to be clear out or making more precise in the further project when it comes on the SPI. I think what we are a little bit missing there is the social dimension of the sustainability, because it's as all aspects as we define sustainability is a crucial tool, and we see with the battery regulation that it's possible to take social aspects into account, and this is not what I see in the SPI yet, we don't see also the aim of reducing our consumption behavior. So it's targeting the right problems, but it's not targeting the reduction or the change as much of our consumption behavior, because I think we also have to discuss this, as we also have to use less resources in order to to achieve our carbon emission reduction targets. So I think this is maybe a little bit the first aspects I wanted to underline. But in general, I think it's a very good approach.
Good. So on that note, I'd like to take a question from the audience, from Teddy Bernier from CO2 Value Europe, asks, beyond the crucial issue of durability, repairability, what do the panelists see as specific and meaningful provisions to reduce the carbon footprint of products? Maybe I'll start with you, Paolo. As you mentioned earlier, your industry, I mean, the home appliances industry has been already targeted by eco-design policy for the past 25 years. What's your answer to this question?
Yes, indeed. To be able to carve down the CO2 emissions, we have to definitely assess on a product-by-product basis where most of the emissions are and how to tackle them. In our own products, like 80% of those are part of the useful life, and they come from the energy that appliances do use. So by the decarbonization of the electricity supply, it would then be as the right consequence, then also the drastic reduction of the CO2 impact of our products. So I think that here it is a subject where we have to assess the full life cycle of products and understand where we can go in order to act fast. Because what is important is that we have facing us a big problem where we all have to take a right step in the direction. So I think it's an important element of the future discussions, because what we have today in the SPI proposal, it is actually a shell that must be filled in with content. So while all the right ingredients are there, then the way in which we fill in the content is extremely important.
Indeed. I have another question from the audience, and I'd like to put it to Delara, but obviously all the panelists feel free to wave at me so that I can make sure to bring you in the discussion as well. It's a question from Yolanda Schmal. She asks, isn't a tax change also needed? It's something we briefly touched upon with the Commissioner. A shift from taxes on labor to taxes on resources. Is resource depletion is more attractive than utilizing labor, she says. So, Delara, what do you think? Should we also reform the way our taxing and taxation system work to incentivize and also signal maybe to consumers where sustainable products are, and incentivize dues consumption as well?
I mean, we are kind of having a problem in both aspects, in a sense, because right now we are seeing that those with a more sustainable consumption or production pattern, they are not having benefits on the European market. And I think this is a structural problem, which is connected, of course, also to the question of incentives. And I think we have to talk about that. And I think maybe the question of resources is one, the taxation of resources is one that we should discuss in that sense. But still, it it's just one smart part of what we have to discuss here, because what we are facing as a problem is that products right now on the market are not made to last. And this is a problem that you can incentivize by making it possible to have resources having their own value and being putting them back into a cycle is a value that we have to cost. And maybe taxation is a solution on that, but I think having product standards on a European level can contribute also a lot. So I think the discussion is very important, like changing the discussion on making waste as having a value and having something that is good and useful and economic senseful to put back in the loop, which is right now not the case. And this is what I regret, that those who have the ideas, who have actually a more future-proof business model, they right now not having benefits on the European market. And this is not compatible with the European Green Deal.
Justin, do you want to maybe also come in here on this question?
Yeah, if I could just touch on the fiscal side, because I think this eco-design as a tool is a very important tool. And ultimately, what are we talking about with regard to sustainability? It's about incentivizing what you want and disincentivizing what you don't want. And that's what the policymaker needs to do across a whole host of policy areas, and use all of the tools available to them in their toolbox. And I think the good thing about eco-design is that given that 80% of your environmental problems are designed in at the design phase, eco-design, by setting minimum environmental performance, really tackles that issue, and that's the push element of the framework. And obviously, then the pull element of the framework is reliable information for consumers, reliable and useful information for consumers to help them to make the right choices of what's left on the market, to encourage the market to increase its environmental performance over time.
Matthias, maybe if you want to comment also on this one.
Just to add two little bits, because I think the Honourable MEP and Justin made a very important point. The framework already foresees, and I think this is a big difference from what we have now. So one of the measures on side of pull incentives is that we foresee a compulsory green public procurement. So basically, when we're able, or when we assess its opportunity to set categories of performance, there would be an obligation for public authorities to buy the better products, if you want. And on the other side, the information generated that would go through life cycle impacts will be beneficial to the consumers, but also to businesses in supply chains, and at the end also to the public authorities when they're making choices that fall within their national competencies on taxation, because it can give them better picture on what kind of consequences basically on a macro scale can be generated by production of different products. So just wanted to complement, because it's a very important point.
Indeed. And so I'd like to also ask, and I'll start with you, Paolo, about how this new framework will also incentivize maybe new business model, more circular business model around renting, leasing. Do you already see that emerging, and are there already some obstacles that you'd like to see lifted to encourage the industry into these new business model?
Yes, indeed. Having staff as a service, in a sense, it has been discussed a lot. But allow me to clarify that, like leasing something is more of a financial instrument rather than an environmental tool. Take a car, for example. There is a value in purchasing a car, and instead of allocating the whole amount of money upfront, you actually get the use of a mobility service a long time for a period, and then you decide to get for a new car. If you take a kettle, for instance, this is part of our own product portfolio, then because the initial value is different, then speaking about a financial instrument to help change the business model, it's a different matter. So you see, we would actually prefer and favor a common consumer legislation, for instance, in all 27 member states, because today, if a company is willing to offer something as a service, it has to come up with 27 different contracts with consumers in order to respect the national consumer legislation. So here, what we would like to see, in order to facilitate the offer of this financial instrument that might have some beneficial on the environmental side, a uniform consumer legislation in all the United Europe, in the EU, European Union.
Matthias, is that something that the Commission is working on, or is willing to work on, this harmonization aspect?
What we've done for the circular business models, I mean, one thing is it was clear from the stakeholder consultation that vast majority of stakeholders did not want us to regulate what the circular business model is. So we didn't go in this direction. What we did is we do two things. One is we look at how all the rules that are good for environment can actually also help companies that will set products as a service. So durability, repairability certainly goes a long way there. And the second one is we've seen positive feedback on the softer measures, on basically things we're doing on circular economy anyway. So we are foreseeing specific actions on a circular economy, on a circular business models hub. The work on the consumer side, the first part was done now, but there is more in a pipeline. But I wouldn't want to go in details now. I certainly note what Paolo said. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I would like to also ask for your input here. We talk a bit about how the new initiative can provide more information to consumers. What also could be the role of the European Parliament here in maybe clarifying what the type of information that are given to consumers, and also the tools. Are you, for example, in favor of having an EU-wide repairability index that would make it easy for consumers to compare products on EU-wide scale? What other ideas in this field of information and labeling do you foresee, and would you like to see maybe pushed into the proposal from your side?
Yes, so as Parliament, we have been very clear on that, because it's to us kind of obvious that if the consumer can decide in a supermarket or in a shop for or against a sustainable product, this is actually too late. So yes, the transparency and the digital product pass, for example, they can really revolutionize the impact of the knowledge of consumers about the sustainability of a product, and this gives, I think, a lot of pressure, but also presence on where we have until now failing when it comes to deliver on our sustainability goals. So I think this is kind of a very important tool to this, and this is also what I hear when I talk to citizens, that they tell me, well, I would like to have a more sustainable lifestyle, and I would like to know if I'm contributing to harming the environment or people with the product I buy. But right now I don't have security and I don't have knowledge. So having knowledge about this also gives the consumer the power to put pressure on the market in deciding for or against a sustainable product. But I think this is also not enough. When we know, let me take textiles as an example. We right now have the situation, and we have the European goal from 2025 on, we will separately collect old textiles. So we will actually practically separately collect them to put them in the landfill or to burn them. Because right now there's no possibility to have a cycle system of textiles. Because right now the fibers and everything, it's not possible, just physically not possible to recycle them, because they have such a bad quality and you don't have knowledge on that. So yes, the part of making sure that consumers know about the product is one big important step, but it also makes it easier, for example, for recyclers and different actors in the whole supply chain to have transparency on that. So I think it can be a really, really helpful tool, but I'm repeating myself, it won't be enough with that. So of course we shouldn't not only know what is bad about a product and what is good, but we also should have minimum criteria on the social and ecological standards of products connected to that. So I think it's both having the knowledge, but also making sure that sustainable products become the norm on the EU market.
Justine, I'd like to ask you also about this, because ECOS has repeatedly said that the burden shouldn't fall on consumers entirely in adopting more sustainable lifestyle. So what can be done indeed here to incentivize a different behavior? And as we know, knowledge is power, but maybe that's not entirely the solution, or at least not the silver bullet here, as this product needs to remain also, I guess, affordable for all households.
I think there's a few elements here. If one looks at textiles or any product category or sector, we're not going to recycle our way to sustainability. I think that's absolutely clear. If I'm looking at textiles, we need to be limiting microplastic release, for example, as a key objective. We need to be ensuring that hazardous substances are not in the product from the design phase, because obviously that then impacts on reuse, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to be very careful there. In terms of business models, I think there is an interesting element that policymakers can play in terms of incentivizing reuse and refill. I think that will be an absolutely critical way ahead for circular business models, for the reason that without that, we are going to continue our consumption of plastics, and we can't do that. That is not sustainable. So that's absolutely vital. In terms of the consumer does have a key role to play, but obviously the information available to consumer needs to be regulated. So it's very welcome that the Commission is doing that in one of the proposals that they've come out with. Our findings, for example, we released last year a report on plastics labelling. We found just over half of claims to be misleading, and that's in line with what government authorities have also found. So there is a clear role here for the eco-design to play. It currently does that under the energy label, for the energy-related products that it's regulating, and that's proven very successful. That's also touched on circularity aspects as well from the labelling perspective, and it's good to see that proposal being taken forward in the new eco-design framework.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, Matthias, I'd like to ask you also about this issue of labeling, and how do you assess actually the environmental footprint of product? I know the Commission has already developed some methodology on that, the product environmental footprint methodology, actually. How are you going to take this forward? I guess it's maybe more coming in July with the Green Claims Initiative, maybe that will be more related to this. But how are you working on this methodology to also maybe harmonize how the information is displayed to consumers on on the impact, of some products on the environment?
Maybe just to first underline what is in the proposal. What is in the proposal is clearly saying that when information that is currently displayed or could be displayed in energy labeling, so in energy label regulation can be effectively done, this is what we will continue to do, because it has proven to be very, very successful, and nobody wants to undermine that. Second, because there will be categories of impacts that are both relevant for the consumer and may be presented in a way that's relevant for them, there could be additional, call them SPI labels if you want. We'll have to see how we call them. So that would be a way of displaying information or have it contained in a digital way for the products that will be regulated by the SPI. So that's the first part of the question. Clearly, some of these would be impacts along the life cycle of the product. And their Commission had, I think, just in December, issued a recommendation on how can you use product environmental footprint in this sense. So there could be other LCA methods. We'll be looking at this, but clearly PF would be something that would be very useful to have as an also guidance for us to understand how the impacts are distributed. So there's no definitive answer on a question on methodology here. I think it's this. Now, second, the Commission is still looking also at the Green Claims Initiative, which is a bit different because the main purpose of the Green Claims was really to look at all the various voluntary claims. So what we're doing in SPI, we're looking at where do we think the biggest impact can be done? And if this is a priority for consumers for reducing the impacts, this is where we intervene. What Green Claims would do is would help the consumers by requiring methodology or methodologies with which one has to comply if one wants to make a so-called green claim.
And so I'd like to talk about another aspect of the proposal and ask you, Matthias, why is the question of a ban on unsold goods, why wasn't this made a horizontal requirement that would be cross-cutting around a large variety of products? Why did the Commission not decide to go there?
I think it's fair to say that I'm not sure your question is actually factually completely correct, but let me turn this around. We went there. We had seen evidence and action being taken in some member states that suggest that in several sectors, destruction of unsold goods may be a problem on a significant scale. What we didn't have was sufficient evidence for us to immediately regulate which sectors are these and then require impositions, so prohibitions straight away. And this is why we went for a two-step approach. First requirement of transparency, where the companies of sufficient size will be required to display information on what they do with goods. We've done this in a proportionate way, so they have some leeway on where they publish this. There's no structured reporting obligation. And as a second step, we do foresee empowerment for the Commission to come with potentially quite broad and horizontal prohibition in a second stage where we would have this information. So that's why I was taking a few seconds reflecting on how to respond to your question.
Okay, no, but thank you very much for clarifying. So I will take now a few questions from our audience. I'm looking at what we have here. A lot of questions actually for you, Matthias, actually. One that is very popular. What will be the interaction of the SPI with the packaging and packaging waste regulation? Maybe if you could clarify here the interaction between these two pieces of legislation, if you have more information on this.
Well, a simple answer, and the one consistent with the time limits we've got, is that we have limited opportunities. We left limited opportunities for the SPI to intervene in packaging where it is really product-centric. But principally, it will be the revision of the packaging and waste directive that will continue to deal with the packaging.
Okay. Paolo, I saw you wanted to comment maybe on the question before that one. Yes?
Yes, if I may, because here I think it's important that we understand the relationship between two different legislations. First of all, why would anybody with a rational mind destroy unsold goods? And there is a reason, at least for the products that do represent in the home appliance business, especially in the small domestic appliance business. The consumer legislation allows for online sales a return within 14 days with no question asked. So when you are a company and you see coming back air fryers, electric toothbrush, razors, epilators, and then what do? You cannot simply resell them. So if the cost of refurbishing them and bringing them to the point where you can actually resell them is higher than anything else, then the rational mind is making a choice. When, as it also happens, instead of the air fryer, you get back pebbles, then the question is clear. So to me, it's important to understand that there are interactions between legislations, and that is a specific case where a provision in the consumer legislation is actually creating not a problem, but an issue in something else. So we have always to go at the root cause of the problems in order to properly address them. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And we have a couple of questions still on different aspects of the SPI and notably on green public procurement criteria. Maybe I'd like to ask to bring you, Delara and Justin, on this. What also can public institution, governments, how can they, in a way, show the way when it comes to sustainability and choosing sustainable products? What kind of criteria could be imposed on maybe, obviously building on the Commission's proposal, but maybe going beyond that on governments to make sure that what they indeed, the public procurement is as sustainable as it can be. Maybe Delara, or if you want to start.
Yes, I can say some things about that because I'm actually traveling a lot and exchanging a lot with communes who want to be more, who have different goals, like being a circular city or being a fair trade city, and they always tell me the same problem, that when it comes to procurement, there is no obligation to have sustainability criteria being implemented. And if you implement it by yourself as a region or as a federal state or whatever, then you have to watch out very, very closely if on every step that you take, if the criteria are still fitting. So I can give you the example of the city of Ghent. We have been there with a group of MEPs because they were having winning the Fair Trade City Award, and they were describing the challenge with the example of their library. They were saying that they looked at every point of the process building this library to make it fair, to have sustainability criteria being implemented, etc. And then they forgot one tick when it comes to the cafeteria of this library, and so they don't have the obligation there now to for example sell a fair trade coffee. So it's the ambition and it's the will of the city to do so, but then in the end it's so in the structures and how you have to organize public procurement, it's always a voluntary task. So I think it's the best thing governments and public bodies can do is lead by example, of course, to do that, but then in the end it's also important that in the process of public procurement we have the criteria also fixed in the process, and this is a structural problem we have to fix, because right now it's a voluntary exercise, and this makes it harder based on finance and everything to oblige to it, and that this is why I think again I'm in this point, if we want that sustainable products and sustainable consumption is not a lifestyle for a few, but the reality for all Europeans, then we have to work on the same definitions and standards also on a governmental level, I think. And the public bodies have a responsibility to lead by example with that. I'm convinced by that.
Mm-hmm. Justin, did you also want maybe to comment on this question or complement what others have answered before?
A little bit of both, I think. Public procurement, I don't think, can be seen as an alternative to regulating minimum environmental performance, which is what eco-design does, but I think it can play a role in lifting up that market. And if I take the example of cement, which is a material that's not included in the SPI, it's included in the construction products regulation, but we hope to a similar environmental ambition as it would be had it been considered under the eco-design framework. Cement globally responsible for 8% of CO2 emissions. There are a lot of innovative approaches now to cement technology. So the barrier to deploying low carbon cement is not technological. It is market related, it's standards related, it's policy related. And we really need to break down those barriers so that we can decarbonize the cement sector. And one way we can do that is with public procurement. And I was looking at a tool the other day that's active in the US, where procurers can look at the environmental product declarations with regard to cement and make their choices based on that. So I think there are some very interesting approaches that public procurers can deliver. And I think also looking at voluntary measures, I think one failure of the existing eco-design framework is the voluntary agreements. We've seen it really not deliver for printers and game consoles from an environmental perspective. They can be quite a damaging approach, and particularly if we are looking at environmental priority sectors, whether that's textiles, furniture, mattresses, tires, detergents, paints, lubricants, and the intermediates that are going to be considered under eco-design. We really don't want to be going down a voluntary agreement on any of those environmental priority sectors. I think that would be a seriously missed opportunity, and those voluntary agreements have been used by industry to avoid environmental ambition and being used by incumbents at the expense of the innovative smaller players on the market. So I think that is something to really consider when the Commission proposal is going through a co-decision process.
Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, we are reaching slowly the end of the event. But I'd just like to, on this last point, and before we look at the result of the poll and that we do closing remarks, ask you, Matthias, indeed on this issue of voluntary agreements. And I understand that printers, for example, will now be regulated under the current work program. Why did the Commission decided to keep this possibility in the legislation to have businesses come together and agree on a voluntary agreement to avoid indeed hard legislation in this case?
Yeah, thanks a lot for mentioning both. So we had actually had a very good exchanges with the imaging sector. I think I just had a meeting with them this morning or yesterday. But despite those, we agreed that it would be more in line with current criteria on self-regulation to regulate. We did keep an opportunity for voluntary agreements. As you will see, it's even more, I would say, demanding of those who want to enter, simply for two reasons. One must always, I think, consider an option that there may be sectors which would not be a priority sectors. So we would not be wanting to regulate them, that would want to move, and why then deprive them of the additional value of having a voluntary agreement. And then, as I said, the second one is one should always give an opportunity. That was the rationale behind it. The provisions actually themselves, which may be of interest, of course, especially to the Parliament and the Council, have been quite substantially improved in our view, in terms of really making sure that the agreements deliver. So I'm not taking any position on the agreements that were or are in place now, but we wanted to keep this option on the table, but at the same time have very strong safeguards to make sure that they actually do add to something that otherwise, so they're basically better than what we would do in regulating.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for clarifying. And so, since we have to come to a close, we'd like to thank you all very much for taking part to this panel discussion. So I'm just going to go quickly over the result of our poll. The question was, what is the most important element to make products more sustainable? And so 39% of our audience thinks that verifiable evidence to show that product design is becoming more sustainable is the most important element. And second, 35% thinks that durability and reusability requirements are key. So these are indeed two aspects that the Commission is working on and are already part of the package and of the second package that will come in July. So I think indeed the Commission is on the right track here, it seems. So thank you very much all for taking the time to talk with us about how to make sustainable products the norm. This discussion is, I think, providing us with a lot of food for thought, and we are very much looking forward to the discussion in the Parliament and in the Council in the coming months on these files. To finish, I'd like to thank our audience for their interesting questions. I'm really sorry we didn't have the time to go through all of them. But indeed, very interesting and detailed questions. And also thanks to our partner for the event, the US Cotton Trust Protocol. Please don't hesitate to send us feedback on how we can improve our events by emailing live@politico.eu. And don't forget to check our website for upcoming events. We have a great lineup this year again, including the Sustainable Future Week on November 29th to December 2nd. Thank you very much for tuning in with us. Have a great week, everyone.